Welcome to today's Clarity Chat. If you've ever wanted your emails to work for you while you're busy running your business, you're going to love today's conversation. We're talking all about evergreen email sequences, what they are, how to use them, and how they actually bring in sales while you sleep. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Alea Daniel, founder of Willow Tree Copy Co. Alea, do you just want to start us off by telling us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I am an email strategist and copywriter. And so, in short, I help small businesses nurture and sell to their audience using email marketing. I'm complete done for you, which means that I handle everything from the ideas to the strategy to the writing to implementing and then the analysis to make sure that everything that we're doing is working.
Awesome. Thank you. So, as we dive in, let's start simple. That's the goal of these chats, after all, is to simplify marketing for the average solopreneur. Can you tell us what an evergreen sequence is and why solopreneurs should even care about setting one up?
Yeah. So, an evergreen sequence is a series of emails that are automated. So the difference between evergreen and a live broadcast would be if you're sending an email in real time to your list, it's going to go to everybody who's on your list right now. Whereas an evergreen sequence can go to anyone who comes into your world at any point. So that means maybe your oldest subscriber as well as your newest subscriber that you got today. It's something that you set up in the background of your business and it's just working for you on autopilot. There are so many different kinds of evergreen sequences, and I think we're going to kind of get into that today, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, that kind of already answers the question, where does an evergreen sequence fit into the bigger picture of running a one-person business, a solopreneurship? But before we dive into the details, let's just take a brief moment to acknowledge that some of you who are watching may not have an email list yet, and that's okay. But that's where we want to go for the rest of this chat. And that's really where I step in the gap for solopreneurs, is the lead generation. And sometimes that can be so overcomplicated and overlooked for the average solopreneur. So stay tuned for more videos on this topic. But for now, I will say this: let's not overcomplicate it. So talk to your audience, learn what they need, figure out what questions your audience is asking, then create a lead magnet that answers the questions that they're asking. So that could be in the form of a guide or a checklist or a training. For example, I offer a workbook that helps solopreneurs brainstorm and create lead generation funnels like this. Alea offers a 12-month email organizer. Those are things that can help people just at the forefront when they're just trying to figure it out, right? And that's what you want to start to create for your audience. It's an entry point, and it's a way for you to build that email list. So, with that said, let's pivot back to the topic at hand, actually leveraging that email list. So, diving into the different types of evergreen sequences, Alea, can you just start us off simple? What is a sequence?
So a sequence, it's a series of emails that is going out to your list. And like we mentioned before, it's automated. So there are so many different kinds, like we said. That does include a welcome sequence, which many of you might be familiar with. There is also a sales sequence that you can make evergreen, meaning it would be running in the background. There are things called win back campaigns, which is actually something that I'm working on for one of my clients right now. And essentially, that's just kind of what it sounds like. It's for customers who used to be subscribed to her subscription, who've canceled for one reason or another, and we're trying to earn them back. And so once they unsubscribe, after a few weeks, they go into this win back campaign. And our goal is to get them to resubscribe. And so we have all kinds of strategies in that sequence that'll do that. There is an offboarding sequence, which can be for your clients who maybe you had a project and now you want to offboard them. I've created that for one of my clients where inside of the offboarding sequence, we have a referral program that we're inviting them into. And then there's also a nurture sequence, which I think is kind of what we're going to focus on today.
Yeah, so when we're talking about nurturing, can you just explain the difference between an evergreen sequence and a welcome sequence? Are they the same thing? Are they different? How should kind of the average solopreneur differentiate between these two?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, an evergreen sequence is the umbrella, and a welcome sequence falls underneath it. So, a welcome sequence is a kind of evergreen sequence, but there are lots of different kinds of evergreen sequences. And I would say that the welcome sequence is probably one of the most important evergreen sequences for your business because it truly is welcoming your subscriber into your world after, like you mentioned, a freebie, or a lead magnet of some sort, even if it's a discount, that is going to funnel into the welcome sequence and really warm them up for the offers that are to come.
And then what is the difference between an evergreen sequence that sells and one that nurtures?
Yeah, so one that sells is going to sell a very specific offer. And typically, this is going to come after a welcome sequence that is specific to your lead magnet. So, for example, say you're an author and your lead magnet is, I don't know, maybe a roadmap of 5 steps to publishing your first book. And so that is what gets subscribers onto your list. Once they finish that welcome sequence, they could then go into a sales sequence where you're selling maybe a low ticket offer. And it could be on an ebook on how to publish your first book in 60 days or less. And that entire sales sequence would be pointed to getting them to purchase the paid offer. Whereas a nurture sequence is simply there to nurture. It's not uncommon to sell things in your nurture sequence because we're sharing links to things, whether it's like a blog post or a product or something like that. But it's not direct selling when it comes to your nurture sequence. It's really catering to your audience and providing value and really showing up for them and keeping them engaged.
Yeah, perfectly described. So if somebody only has time to build one type of sequence right now, which one should they start with? Should it be a nurture sequence or should it be the selling sequence so that they can actually make some money? I think that we're all naturally inclined to want to create the sales sequence first, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it would have to depend on a couple of things. So you may want to consider your list size. So if you're just starting out with your email marketing, it's likely that you don't have a very big list yet. So you may want to save the sales sequence for a few more people on your list, because when we're talking about sales, when it comes to maybe a low ticket offer, we need volume,
Mm,
right? And so I think the best bang for your time, maybe your buck too, would be a nurture sequence.
yeah.
Because with the nurture sequence, especially if you're a solopreneur where you don't have the bandwidth to email your list every week, maybe you only have the bandwidth to email them once a month. If you create that nurture sequence, you're still checking in with them, I don't know, maybe 2 times per month, and keeping them engaged and warmed up, and you're staying top of mind. So I would say long term, that nurture sequence is going to be a much better choice if you're just starting out with your email marketing.
I think when it comes to the nurturing component too, it's just showing consistency. You're showing up for them time and time again. It really does like accentuate the value that you want to bring to them is the way that I view it from a lead generation perspective. So I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and they say, I think it's on average, a person needs 7 touch points before they actually purchase. And so you're getting all of that in. Like when you are, sending those nurture emails, those are touch points every single time when they're opening up those emails. So,
Well, and with
yeah.
the welcome sequence in particular, I mean, for myself, I know I've really tried to interject a lot of my personality into them so that they really know who it is that they're working with. Obviously, that can vary depending on the business type and if you're a personal brand versus, an e-commerce brand or something like that. But I do think that emails can be really fun at the beginning with the nurturing. Like you can have some fun with it. And that's just one thing that I love about email marketing. So, okay, we know the types now. Let's talk about the structure of a sequence like this. How many emails do you recommend in a good evergreen sequence for a small business in particular?
So if we're talking about a nurture sequence, let's pretend that that's the choice our audience has made and that they're going to go with the nurture sequence. I would recommend in the beginning creating a nurture sequence that's going to be for 3 months and talking to your list 2 times a month. So that means that you're going to need to carve out some time to write 6 emails, and you're going to want to send them bi-weekly. So once you have those 6 emails, you're going to go into your email platform, you're going to go to automations, and you're going to plug them in. And they could be about essentially anything you want them to be. Of course, it's always great when you can connect the story that you're talking about in your email back to your business somehow, or maybe a problem or challenge that they're struggling with. But that way you have 3 months of emails carved out. And the beautiful thing about an evergreen sequence, and specifically a nurture sequence, is that you can add to it. Right. So if you have those 3 months carved out, you can go into your email platform and add 6 more emails on the back of that, because maybe in those 3 months you had some time to write 6 more emails. And so that means that anyone who's going through that sequence and got to the end are just going to continue to get the next 6 emails that you send out. So it's a really great way to maximize your efforts when it comes to like the content you're writing.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you just gifted everybody with that. So I guess that kind of answers the question, is there a magic number of days that you should wait between emails? Can you expand on that piece a little bit more? Like, is there a certain number of days that works best that you've noticed?
I would say whatever number you choose, being consistent. So with a welcome sequence, the best number is typically between 2 and 3 days to space it apart. You want to talk to them pretty frequently in the beginning. But when it comes to your nurture sequence, you also want to be consistent. So if you decide I want to talk to them 2 times a month, you want it to be bi-weekly on
Yeah.
the dot, so that they can come to kind of expect you. Like they kind of know when your emails are going to be coming. The thing about an evergreen sequence is you can't schedule it for a specific day per se, or a specific time, but some platforms will allow you to schedule it for like roundabout times. So, like between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., or Monday through Friday only. I would just say to be consistent with the timing in between each email.
Love that advice. So length is one thing, content is another. What kind of offers tend to work best in an evergreen sequence?
So I would say the ones that tend to work best in an evergreen sequence are going to be low barrier offers. So these are things that are either a low time commitment for your subscriber, or it's going to be a low ticket offer. So like low price, or it can be both. It can be low time and price. And so it allows your audience essentially to become a part of your world in a different way. So it's one thing for them to be a subscriber, but it's another thing for them to be a paid customer. They trust you completely differently. They're much warmer, which means that when you come forth with larger offers in the future, they're more likely to purchase. I mean, even if you think about it, if you know a creator that you've purchased from once or twice, usually you're more likely to purchase from them again, because you trust them at that point. So things that are low barrier, and that could be something like a toolkit, it could be a mini course, anything, a template, it could be anything like that. That's typically going to do pretty well.
And then would you recommend a complete sales sequence for those higher ticket offers and just having that be
Yes.
a separate component?
I would say so, because typically when there is a larger price tag, not always, there needs to be a little bit more nurturing. And of course, it depends on where the person is in their journey. So if they purchased from you before, maybe they don't need that entire sequence in order to be converted. But if they're in the beginning and they've never purchased from you before, they're a little bit colder. So they do need that entire sales sequence for maybe something that they might consider to be a larger investment.
Obviously, these emails are automated. That's the whole point of an evergreen sequence, right? We're not going in there every single day and doing this work. We're planning and we're executing in our email service provider of choice. How do you keep those emails feeling personal and human when they're so clearly automated? Is there a way to present yourself in these emails in a way that feels more natural? Is there any advice that you can give there?
Yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice with making them feel personal is to write them yourself. No shade to AI. I think that AI is a great tool and you can use it in this instance. In fact, sometimes I'll write an email and then I'll run it through like my trained chat GPT that's like trained in my voice, tone, and style to polish it up and make it more reader friendly. But I wrote the bones of it. And so I think really just getting in there, writing the emails yourself so that it really feels like you. And like you said before, like it can be fun, right? Like allowing your personality to flow. And I think it's also about being true to yourself in emails. So, like, if in person you're an outgoing, bubbly person, be outgoing and bubbly in your emails. If you're more of a calm person, be calm in your emails. Like, it really should sound like you, especially if your business is tied to your personal brand. So, that's what I would say to make it feel personal.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point about AI too. I love that you give an example of you write it first and then you put it through the AI versus I think the most common scenario is that we go to AI and then we edit the AI version. And I think that we can get a lot more personal, a lot more of our brand essence in our emails if we start by writing it ourselves first and then potentially feeding it through AI. Not that you have to. I do want to give permission. You don't have to run it through AI. I really do believe that you can do it, right? We can do these things without AI, but I understand the appeal of it because it makes it easier.
And if
But
you do feel like you need to use AI, which is totally okay, if you feel like you're kind of crunched for time, if you have the opportunity to train your own GPT, that might be a better route just because it allows consistency all throughout. So it's not as though one of your emails going to sound professional and a little more buttoned up and the other one's going to sound casual. You're just going to get that consistency if you train it, but you want to train it to sound like you, not like someone else.
which I suppose always starts with you writing something.
Right? Exactly.
So once we have these evergreen sequences live, how do we know that it's actually working? Is there one metric or a couple metrics that solopreneurs should, just watch out for or um, look at on a consistent basis to know that their evergreen sequence is actually working for them?
For sure. So you're going to want to take a look at two things. You're going to want to look at your open rates and you're going to want to look at your click rates, also known as click through rates. You'll see them in your email platform. It's usually the first thing that you see on your dashboard. And so for an evergreen sequence, that's a nurture sequence, it's going to be the same as if you were to send regular emails. Metric you're going to want to stay in the range of is between 20 and 30%. But if you can get to about 35% or above, that's like excellent. For me personally, I aim closer to 50% for my clients, but you also have to keep in mind that your industry is going to affect what that open rate is going to be, right? So if your industry is something that is a little more niche, you might have a higher open rate. If it's something that is a little less niche, your open rate might be lower. So it might be best to kind of look into what the metrics are for your specific industry. But as a general rule, I would say between 20 and 30%. And then for your click through rate, you're going to want to be at about 2 to 5%. Anything above 5% is going to be excellent. That's pretty much going to be the same all across the board, no matter what your industry is.
Yeah.
But you want to keep in mind that if your evergreen sequence, if you opt for a sales sequence, that the open rates are going to be a little bit lower. It's like this with all sales emails. Open rates are lower. So you're going to want that between about 15 to 25%. And then you're going to want your click through rates about 1 to 3%. And the same for your conversions. So you're going to want to convert people at about 1 to 3% with those sales emails.
Yeah. A lot of times people are sending their audience to sales pages from their emails. But even if you were to send, traffic from organic social or a paid ad to a sales page, that's the same on the conversion rate metrics that I would be looking at on the landing page side of things.
Oh, okay.
Typically, the sales rates are between that 1 to 3%, depending on industry, offer, and price point, and where you're directing the traffic from. If you're sending completely cold traffic to your sales page, your conversion rate is going to be much lower than if you have nurtured them through email for a while and they're coming from an email sequence. Naturally, they trust you a little bit more on this side versus this side. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to metrics too. So if your, open rate or click-through rate is underperforming and it's not where you want it to be or you want to optimize it more, what is the first thing that you suggest they tweak?
So I would take a look at the sequence and see if people are dropping off. So typically, most platforms will allow you to see how many people are at what email. And so if you are noticing that people are not moving on to the next email, then you'll know that they've dropped off, and kind of see like, well, why did they drop off? Look at maybe the last two emails before that. I would also take a look at the subject lines and preview texts and see if maybe those need a little bit of tweaking, especially if your open rates aren't where you want them to be.
Mhm.
That might just mean that people aren't enticed. They see your subject line and it's just not that interesting to them. So I would look at those two things.
And those are relatively quick updates in most email service providers, right? It's just a quick switch of the headline and you click update. Am I correct in that?
Yes, it's super quick. And it's a lot of times it is those little tweaks that can make a huge difference. But yeah, you just go in and you update it. Now, if you are noticing people are opening them, but they're still dropping off, it could be a content issue. It
Mhm.
could be the content of the email. Maybe that's not what people are looking for. So you might want to reevaluate the questions that your audience is asking you and then start answering those questions in those emails, because then it would be a completely different issue at that point.
Right. That actually brings up a really solid point too. How are we building our email list? Are our initial offers that we're creating for lead generation in alignment with who we're wanting to serve and sell to? That's a whole
Yes.
nother conversation. So we won't go down that rabbit hole, but that does bring up a good point that if you're finding that people are not opening your emails a lot, or they're not engaging, or they're not purchasing, it's very possible that there could be an issue at the top of funnel with the lead generation. Is our offer actually leading them to what we want to sell them in the future? Because if there's a disconnect there, that can impact numbers too.
Absolutely. Like you wouldn't want to have a lead magnet that is more DIY. And then when they get onto your list, you're selling them offers that are done for you
Mm.
because they came into your world because they're looking for resources that they can use to do themselves. So they might not be interested in your done for you services, or at least not for a while. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Such a good point. Such a good example too of DIY versus done for you.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I made that mistake before.
yeah. I feel like most freelancers, coaches, service providers have probably gone through that many
Yeah.
times. Okay, so before we wrap up today, what's one thing you wish every solopreneur knew before creating their first evergreen sequence?
That is a lot more simple than it sounds. So I would say that the word automation, sequence, some of this jargon, it can feel intimidating, but it's actually so simple. Simple in the sense that you do need time to write these emails out. But once you go into your email platform and plug them in, it's very intuitive. And then you are essentially going to set it and forget it. Now, of course, not completely forget it. Like, you want to check in, I'd say at least quarterly, to make sure it's performing how you want it to perform, to tweak any offers that maybe you don't offer anymore, or to add some new offers that you have. But just remembering that it's a lot more simple than it sounds. And it's really going to allow you to maximize your time and maximize your efforts when it comes to your marketing.
What's the most common mistake you see people make?
So, the first thing, and this is a little bit more on the technical side of things, is people overusing emojis in your subject lines,
Okay.
and sometimes in the body of your email as well. And then also having too many links inside of your email. So both of those things go back to deliverability. So you want your subscribers to receive your emails so that they can open them. But when you have too many emojis, or when you have too many links, so like every picture inside of your email doesn't need to be linked to something. You essentially only usually want about one CTA per email. But if you have too many links and too many emojis, it can land in people's spam folders, which kind of works against our efforts, right? Like if it's landing somewhere else, like how are people going to open it? So I would say those two things are probably things people just don't really think about either.
Yeah. Going to the one CTA, one call to action in a welcome sequence, for example, I think a lot of times people will include multiple links in there just simply because they're highlighting the different ways that you can work with them. Do you still recommend doing one call to action in those cases, or like spreading those out maybe over multiple emails in your welcome sequence? Or is it okay to have, an email that has 3, 4 options for them to take action on?
Yes. So in your welcome sequence, it's totally okay to have a list of different ways that people can work with you. I think that's kind of one of the exceptions
Okay.
because it's almost umbrellaed under one CTA. The CTA is work with me, or here's how you can
Yeah.
work with me, but you're just listing different ways. In fact, I would probably keep them all in that one email. But of course, you can sprinkle them throughout when it's relevant. But I think that's totally okay. I think a little bit more when it comes to sales emails is when you want to have one call to action. Like everything should lead back to that sales page.
And the same concept applies to landing pages and sales pages. I preach that all the time. You want to just have one call to action. Otherwise, they're going to be confused what action to take. So
Yeah.
it's very congruent between landing page and email and just remaining consistent with that call to action. That's why I also say don't point your traffic, whether it be paid traffic, organic traffic, just directly to your website. I personally recommend pointing them to a landing page so that you can hyperfixate their attention on that one call to action. I always say people get lost in the sauce when they go to your website because the website, the whole purpose of it is for somebody to do a deep dive. It's kind of like the information hub
Yeah.
for your business. It has everything. But when
Mhm.
you have everything, it's very hard to determine what that one thing is that you should take action on. So that's my little nugget to add to the conversation. Thank you so much, Leah, for your wisdom and brilliance in this
Thank
area.
you.
Truly, if you're watching this and you're ready to start building your evergreen sequence, start small. Pick one goal, one call to action, write a handful of emails, and just let it run and optimize it over time. Like Alea said, email service providers will give you these baseline stats. So you can take a look at it on a quarterly basis and see how it's going. Now, Alea, can you share again just how you support entrepreneurs with their email marketing if they did want to get extra help with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I provide done for you services for all kinds of sequences. So from welcome to evergreen to launch sequences if you are about to launch a new offer. I also provide services for weekly emails. So if you don't feel like you have the bandwidth or you just don't want to be involved with your email marketing, I handle it completely with weekly emails for my clients. And then I just rolled out a new offer for my email marketing audit. So if you are currently doing your own email marketing and you kind of feel like you're falling short somehow, maybe you're not getting the conversions that you want, maybe the open rates and the click rates aren't where they're supposed to be, I will go into the back end of your email marketing platform. I'll look at all of the stats and I will create an audit and give you feedback that you can apply and make your email marketing really work for you.
Love it. Yes, work with Alea. She's amazing at what she does, really.
Thank you.
Now, if you are needing any extra help creating or improving your lead generation efforts, building out those funnels, and optimizing them, actually looking at the stats of your landing page and saying, okay, what do I need to change on this to get a higher conversion rate, to get my email list built faster or more consistently? I think the consistency is a key piece in lead generation that a lot of solopreneurs struggle with. So I will kind of provide all of the links on the ways that you can work with Alea or I. If you are needing extra help in this area, we do hope that this clarity chat has brought a little bit of clarity to your email marketing strategy and makes it a little bit easier. Definitely leave any questions in the comments. If you enjoyed this chat, like, subscribe, all the things. This is a new channel, so thank you for stopping by and watching. But yeah, stay tuned for the next clarity chat. Leah, any final thoughts?
No, I think that's everything. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. Well, take care, everyone. Bye.